everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Business Unboxed with your hosts, Kelly and Corey. And I actually thought before we just jump straight into the topic, I would reintroduce myself and I'll let Corey reintroduce himself as well, because it's been a few episodes now since we've started the podcast doing it together. And some of you may not know who we are and what our backgrounds are. So for me, I am a chartered accountant, live in Christchurch, and I'm currently in employment as a financial systems accountant, which means I kind of do the tech side of accounting as opposed to the front end. And that's kind of just a wee refresher of who I am. I've been the host of this podcast for the last 5-6 years. And then just recently we brought on Corey. So Corey, you just want to give yourself another quick little introduction for the people that might be tuning in that don't know who we are or didn't know who you were from the start.
Sure. So, Corey from Unleashing Potential. We are an e-commerce specialist. So we work with e-commerce businesses, helping them from concept to shelf, essentially. So anywhere from branding, packaging, printing, supply, compliance, Shopify, website development, advertising, almost anything you can think of, but we specialize with e-commerce.
Awesome. So in this episode, we're going to kind of be talking about, Corey's, followed his passion into being a business owner and into that sort of product space, from designing products and packaging to owning now a couple of businesses that kind of work in that space. And I guess you could say, have been practical or played it safe and stayed in full-time employment, even though I do have dreams to potentially one day own my own business and move out of the whole 9-to-5 corporate life. So that's kind of what we're going to be touching on in this episode, is kind of like our opinions of, do you follow your passion? Do you take those risks? Do you play it safe? That kind of stuff. So let's get straight into, the first question, which is, do you think you're a dreamer? Do you think you're more of a realist? I guess you've kind of followed your dreams a little bit more, would you say? Or do you feel like you've played it safe with the path that you've taken?
I wouldn't say I play it safe, no. Yeah, I mean, I guess first thing is I moved from a small town to a big city. Maybe that's not such a big thing, but that was a big move to go away from a small little town that was kind of protected to, where I am now. And then, yeah, I mean, I've gone through jobs, moved locations. I think at one point I remember what I was studying. In whatever it was, 5 years or 6 years of living in Christchurch, I had 6 different houses or something, or places that I was staying, not houses that I owned or anything. But
Jesus.
so I'd moved quite a lot when I first got here, and then I guess fast forward to I got my design job, and then left that, and I guess we talked about Maya in a previous episode, so I guess that was a risk. I guess at that point, I was kind of like, I need to do something more.
Yep.
And so that was a pretty risky thing for us to do, because we got a loan to purchase what we needed to purchase, and we went through that roller coaster. And I guess the biggest risk is when you leave your job and jump into something with no income, right?
Oh yeah, that's a big old risk.
So... Now, I think I mentioned this in the last episode as well. I didn't have a huge salary, so it wasn't like, it wasn't hard for me to leave because of the income. So we were in a position where, I'd saved up and bought the house. We'd had it for quite a while. My partner had an income. We were able to manage without it.
Yeah.
And, we had the conversation around it could take me quite a long time or quite a few years to be back to having an income. But there's, I guess, some people make that leap just to give it a go, and if it doesn't work, they go back to employment, which is fine. I made the leap knowing that this is it. Like, I don't want to go back to employment. That's not an
Mm.
option. So that means that for me, I had to do everything in my power. I had to change, I had to go and do networking, speak in front of people, which doesn't come naturally to me.
Mm.
And
Same.
do a whole bunch of things that I would not normally do, and push myself and grow as a person. And I
Mm.
probably have grown quite a lot, I would say, from where I used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, does that answer the question? So I
Um,
have dreams. I have dreams about doing more and going bigger and doing other things.
yeah,
And I think the trajectory of what I have done would put me in line to do that.
yeah,
But I've made sacrifices, big sacrifices to get where I am today,
yeah,
which isn't
definitely.
necessarily anywhere big, but
But still, you have been in your own business for how many years now? Like three?
it'd be 4 years.
Yeah, so that's quite a long time to be, doing your own thing, making it work.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so the question was, do you follow your dreams or play it safe? Like, are you a dreamer? Okay, so yeah, you've kind of followed your dreams, really, haven't you? Because you've
Yes, I
left
have.
employment, you decided to follow what you wanted to
I've
do.
done exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Whereas me, I would say
You've done
I
half.
I've I've done a little bit of both. Um, I would say I've followed my dreams with my career path,
Mm.
um, because it takes a lot of study to be a chartered accountant, and then changing. There's so many different types of accountants, and so really finding the passion for the type of accountant that I wanted to be, and taking the risk of leaving a job I was comfortable at, like I'd been there for a few years. It was relatively easy to do. Um, and so taking that leap to do something I'd never done before, which is financial systems accounting, even though I'd done a lot of research and it looked like something I'd be really good at and I'd enjoy, I'd never done that before. I had no idea what I was throwing myself into, and I do really enjoy it. So, I mean, have I played it safe? Yes, I've stuck to employment, but at that point in my career, I'm still kind of getting there. That is kind of the path I need to take, because technically, once you become a full CA, you still have like a bracket of how much you're allowed to earn outside of like employment, earning your own stuff before. You've got like 2 years that you have to wait before you can get like a CPP, which is like a certificate of public practice. And so you've kind of got to wait for that in order to earn over a certain amount. In each country, I think it's a little bit different with their rules. So you'd have to look up, if you're a chartered accountant, what the rules are for the country that you're based in. But yeah, so I'm kind of still, I think, on the right path to. I'm playing it safe, but I'm following that path because the rules are kind of there, and I can't break those rules. So we're just kind of making it work. I would say I have big dreams. I'd say I'm probably a dreamer. But then I don't act on them because I'm too risk averse. So
Yes, you are.
I have all these fun ideas to do apps and software and all this kind of stuff. And yet I just sit here and go to my job and come home and do the podcast. I've been doing this now for a few years. But yeah, I'd say I do have big dreams. I just need that sometimes, that little extra push to actually get me to do it, because I just am so risk averse and I don't want to make any mistakes. And I understand that you're going to make mistakes, but like I'm just too scared sometimes. But I'm getting
That's
there.
how
I'm
we
getting
grow.
closer. I know. I'm getting closer. I also signed up, if you're like a professional accountant or even maybe like a lawyer, that kind of thing. You'll know that a lot of professional bodies make you do certain number of hours of training every year, which I don't mind because I do like to learn. But I put myself out of my comfort zone this year because in order to get some extra CPD hours, I have to do like this networking thing a few times a year. And it's about financial system stuff. And it was really good when I went there, but it was really scary because I was going to a room full of people that are obviously similar to me, but I didn't know really anybody. There was one other person I thought was going to be there, and they ended up being there, and then I talked to them pretty much the entire time. But until they got there, I just sat there by myself because I'm not somebody who likes to go up and introduce myself to other people. If people don't come to me, I'm just sitting there alone. But now that I've met one person and she introduced me to a couple of other people, and they kind of came up to me and we kind of chatted because it was my first time going to one of these events. I think next time I'll be able to warm up and I'll be seeing the same type of people there. So I'm also kind of getting out of my safety kind of net of just sticking to myself. I am doing a little bit more of that networking stuff when it comes to my
You need to
CPD
join my
stuff.
networking group. It would be
Maybe
perfect for you.
later in the year.
The moment we had to choose between passion
Yeah.
and security.
So that's kind of easy, right, for you because you literally made that decision already.
Mm-hmm.
That's in your past.
Yes.
For me, I'm still figuring out when that moment might be. But also, I don't plan on jumping out of full time employment like Corey did. If I do start my own business, whether it be later this year, next year, I don't plan on quitting my job and going into business straight away. I do plan on doing the whole few hours in the evenings, in the
Side
weekends.
hustle.
Yeah, I'm gonna treat it as like a side hustle, a bit of extra on the side, and then if it goes well, then maybe over time I can kind of transition those hours from employment into my business and kind of do that kind of swing and stuff. So I don't know if there's going to be like a moment. Well, I guess there will be a moment where I'll have to choose to give up like a 9 to 5 employment job and pursue that. But obviously, because I'm so risk averse, I doubt that I would do that until I had a decent amount coming in and I had enough money saved up and stuff to cover me and all that kind of thing. Because I do have a mortgage, so I can't
The good
just
thing with
jump.
and not that you're going to do what typical financial accountants do, like you might do some
Yeah,
different stuff, but
yeah,
if you do something similar to what they do, or even do from what I know that you want to do,
mm-hmm.
um, most accountants obviously have like retainer monthly payments rather than doing it at the end of the year. So
Yeah,
if you set them up with your clients, you kind of know, even though they can still leave, you kind of know, well, I have X amount of clients.
yeah,
They're all likely to stay, even if 10% of them or 25% of them left, I'm still left with this figure.
yeah,
So, there's some sort of security there. Whereas with what I did
mm,
when I first started my business, I didn't really do retainer work. It was project work.
yeah,
So you do a project that would finish. Now, obviously, we do ads and SEO services, and there's more retainer stuff there,
yeah.
and hosting. But um, that's potentially a bit of a perk there, or might make it easier for you to transition.
Yeah. Hopefully it will because I don't want to be an employee for the rest of my life. Like, I don't want to do this for another 35, 37 years. I would like to retire early. And by like retire early, I mean, and I think we're going to discuss it further down in the topics we've got today, but like, I mean, just being like happy and sufficient in the money that I've got, that I don't need to trade every hour for money back. You know what I mean? That's to me
Mm,
what I mean by like retire early is I get to choose how I make my money and I'm not forced to like work all day every day to make, trade my time for money in order to live the life I want to live.
mm.
But yeah. So I guess that kind of flows on onto how do you know if something is worth the risk? Because you've taken that risk. So how did you know that that was going to be worth it? Or did you not know until further down the line you're like, okay, that was worth it now in hindsight?
I don't know. I mean, obviously, there's ways to look at figures if you're purchasing a business,
Mm-hmm.
or there's ways to look at risk. But I guess most people probably don't really know what the risk is,
Mm,
um, or if it's worth the risk when they start something because you don't know what's on the other side of the fence.
exactly.
Um, you kind of have to, going into it. My partner Jason and I, we both sat down and there's a few things that because we planned it in advance and I didn't just make a split decision. Like we knew this was happening, I don't know, months before it did.
Right.
So that, meant that I could have time to plan. So I knew that
Mm,
when I left my job, I would get a bit of extra money for my holiday pay. So that went towards fixing some things around the house that we needed to fix and get done because we knew that, the next few years are going to be quite hard.
mm-hmm.
Uh, I did a budget. I'm going like, well, here's all our personal expenses. Here's what Jason's income's going to be. Can we afford to survive?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we obviously could.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, there's a whole bunch of things you can do to mitigate any risk that might be there.
Yeah.
And then you have to then think on the business side, well, what's the worst thing that could go wrong, right? Probably apart from anything really bad happening, in terms of like lawsuits or your
Yeah.
stock gets stolen or major things like that. The
Yeah.
worst thing that can happen is I don't make any money for a few years.
Yeah.
And I do lots of networking, social media, whatever, and nothing just comes of it.
Mm,
That's probably one of the worst things that could happen. So it's like,
yeah.
well, that's a low risk, right? I'm already kind of planning not to make any money for X amount of
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so you just kind of have to look at both sides and make sure that there's some sort of contingency
Yeah.
and give yourself more time than you think. So you might think, oh, I should, if I get my website up and running, I should be able to make money in the next month or 3 months or 6 months. It's not always the case. You need to,
Mm,
in my opinion, you need to try and think of years, right? If you can
yeah.
bank on not having an income for a year and
Mm-hmm.
survive and
Mm-hmm.
still work in your business full time, you should be almost guaranteed to be able to make some money in that time if you're focusing 30, 40 hours a week working on it full time non-stop for an entire year. Otherwise, I
Yeah.
would say you're probably doing something wrong or something's not quite right.
Definitely.
um and now it was obviously worth the risk. Yes, it was definitely worth the risk. um because there's trade-offs, and for me, I didn't make a huge amount of money for a long time. Well, I still didn't make a huge amount of money, but
Mm,
um, I didn't have a proper income for years,
yeah.
but I didn't leave my job to have a big income. I obviously need to
Mm,
earn an income. I left it to have freedom
yeah.
and to help more customers, which
I
gives me
think,
fulfillment personally, and that's what I've been able to achieve. I do have
yeah.
more freedom. I'm sitting on my bed right now. I'm probably going to sit here and do some work after this. I have a meeting at 10 o'clock tonight. Um, I can work wherever I want, when I want, how I want, and that's what I wanted, and that's what I have.
Mm, yeah. I think that's important that, yeah, like you say, you don't know what's going to be on the other side. When you're changing things, you never know how it's going to work out. So the best thing you can do is to look at everything, make yourself a budget. The more planning that you're going to put in to
Mm,
know and expect different things that could come up, the more prepared you're going to be if that does come up in order to manage that risk if something does happen. And like you said, you also had really reasonable expectations. You weren't going in your like you weren't thinking like, oh well, I'm going to leave my corporate job and then I'm going to make a ton of money. I'm going to start my own business and it's going to be
mm,
great and I'm going to be super rich. Like you had reasonable, realistic goals and expectations going into business ownership. You knew what to expect. You knew it was going to be a good few years before you were able to make a consistent income because that's the standard, that's the norm. And I think a lot of people just think, oh, well, you see these random stories of people doing stuff and they make millions in their first few months, but that's not the norm. So don't go
Mm.
in expecting that all of a sudden you're going to make a ton of money when you first start a business. That's
Social
not.
media, if you're basing your opinions on social media,
Mm,
most of social media is always the best case scenario. It's the
exactly.
people showcasing the best life that they're living. They're showing off their wealth or their whatever they're doing, which is
Mm-hmm.
great. I'm not putting them down or anything, but you
Yeah.
can't base a financial or a business decision on some ad that you've seen that
Yeah.
someone said, "Oh, it's really easy to make. I made $20,000 in Shopify with a drop shipping store."
Mm,
Well, I'm kind of a bit harsh in this opinion, but there's so many people that do that and have that same YouTube and that same ad going around that they
yeah.
made $50,000, $10,000 in 1 week or 2 weeks with drop shipping, and it's like, and then they want you to do this course to learn how to do it, and it's like, if they were that successful doing drop shipping stores, they should be continuing to develop more and growing the business
Exactly.
more rather than selling you a course on how to do it. So,
Exactly.
is it really that successful? Nah.
Exactly.
Also, whilst you were talking there, there's an analogy that I'm going to loosely relate to this, which in the project space is something along the lines of uh, a task well defined is a task half done, or something along those lines.
Oh, I like that.
So, like, I'm going to relate it to this because if you want to go into business, if you can um, plan for the positives and the negatives on both sides
Mm-hmm.
in your personal
Mm-hmm.
life and how it's going to work, and in the business side and how it's going to work, then that's going to half solve the risk that you might be taking on because you've already
Exactly.
planned for it rather than going, oh, I'm going to hopefully make money in 3 months. It's like you need to plan for the worst case scenario. And
Mm,
then when it happens, you've already planned for it. It's not such a big deal.
yeah, definitely agree. And from my point of view on knowing if something is worth the risk personally for me, it would be similar to what Corey done, which was plan, plan, plan. I haven't taken any huge risks. Like, yeah, I've changed jobs a few times to follow and find my passion in the accounting field. But I wouldn't say I've taken any huge risks to know whether or not it was worth it or not. So I think, um, yeah, it's just planning up front, being aware of, like Corey said, all the things that could go right, all the things that could go wrong. And if you've thought those things through and you have an idea in your head of how you would cope with each of those things, like you said, you're already kind of halfway there in with your mindset.
Hmm.
So, Corey, when you decided to leave, I think you mentioned you knew you were going to get a bit of holiday paid out.
Mm-hmm.
So, was that part of being able to chase your dream and pursue that dream, knowing that there was that little bit of money coming in and having that little safety net? Or was that more of just like a bonus and you were going in there with nothing but just you wanted out and so you just we're going to do it either way?
Yeah. No, there was no safety net. So, I want to make sure everyone realizes we did not have money, like we didn't have cash in the bank as a safety net or anything. Like,
Right.
there was no, we aren't like a wealthy family that has, that earns hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're not like that. So, um, it wasn't easy and it's not easy for a lot of people. There was no
Yeah.
safety net. It was literally, we made sure that Jason's income could cover our expenses, which they could just. Um, and then the rest was kind of up to me. I guess as a caveat, we do have Airbnb in our home, so like that's
Mm-hmm.
part of my income. So I set that up years ago. So that was, I guess, an extra income that we can't rely on because it
Mm-hmm.
changes, but there is still income there to help supplement stuff, our
Yeah.
expenses. Um, and luckily, randomly, not that I was planning it, but in my first year after leaving my job, I actually ended up contracting to a company here in Christchurch just one day a week on a Friday, I would go and spend the day in the office, which
Mm-hmm.
also gave me a little bit of extra money that first year. That wasn't planned. I had no intention of getting a job,
Yeah.
and working, but it just fell into my lap essentially. So, um,
Might as well take
so
the
if you
money.
can have a safety net, and I think we talked in our last episode about different ways to structure buckets and savings, and
Mm-hmm.
my love for Dave Ramsey.
Financial feminist too.
But if you can do that, that puts you in a far better situation, because then you might have a bit more flexibility around, if things pop up, you've got some cash here to spend. You might be able to have a bit of a cushier year. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I would plan on doing. So I wouldn't make that leap without having a safety net personally. But that's just what I would prefer to do. So I am not going to be positioned to make that full leap from employment to business owner until who's in the room with Corey? Side
Jason.
eye. Yeah, so I'm not planning on doing anything without having that extra money because, like you guys know, like I like to be independent and make sure I have my own money. So that's not going to happen for me. So I'm definitely going to be playing it safe. But I mean, Corey's managed to make it work for the last 4 years, and he didn't start with one. So there's no really one right or wrong answer. It depends on your personal circumstances and the journey that you're planning on going through and what you feel comfortable doing, I guess.
Hmm. So, which I guess takes us to looking at side hustles versus going all in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, should you build a business on the side or take the leap? You
Yeah.
obviously all know that I just took the leap. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we did start with a side hustle, I guess, with Maya.
Yes. It was
Um,
a big old side hustle, that one.
but I guess no. I mean, lots of people. What I see in the circles that I'm in is lots of people start a side hustle to try and earn money or get out of working.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, having a side hustle um, can actually, although it might be financially beneficial if you can get it up and running,
Mm-hmm.
it can be a bigger commitment, maybe detriment. It can give you more stress because you're
Yeah.
having to do two things. You're having to work full time,
Mm.
and I mean, Jason and I don't have kids apart from our fluffy ones. So, if you're a parent with children and you're also trying to do this, it makes it even more difficult or challenging.
Mm-hmm.
But, you've got to come home and then you've got to spend hours on a business on the side to make it work. So
Yeah.
for me, it was like I could have gone, worked in an agency or another job, and then tried to set up something on the side, but I just
Mm-hmm.
felt that would be harder
Yeah.
because I'd have to do it outside my working hours probably. So, I can't have meetings during the day when most people are working.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, well, to do it, I want to do it. I'm going to put everything in. I'm just going to take the leap and just make it work. And so
Yeah.
that's what I did. So you've just got to find what works for you. I
Exactly.
know I've chatted to many people that have side hustles, and they have big side hustles that turn over lots of money and are very, very profitable. And, they spend a lot of time outside of their working day um, on them to get them
Mm.
to that position. And they don't want to give up either, because then you end up with the situation when you've got two really good incomes and you're like, oh shit, now I'm used to all this good money. I don't want to give
Mm.
up either. um, so yeah, there's a way up of, if we go back to our previous conversation when we talked about budgeting your personal stuff and your business stuff, it's really a way up of what can you do. A lot of people aren't in a position to go all in and leave their job, so
Yeah.
therefore side hustle has to be the only choice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
Totally agree because I wouldn't be in a position to be able to give up full-time employment and be able to continue paying all of our bills. So that's not an option for me. If I wanted to start my business, I wouldn't be able to just drop it and go all in. I would have to start it as a side hustle. And I think a lot of people do start things as a side hustle. And you kind of touched on the fact that you have to trade even more hours and it's like doubling up. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we've also talked in the past about the struggle a side hustle can actually have on the growth of your business, because you do have less time to work on it. Like you said, there might be some clients you can't really work with because they want to work during their hours, and your hours have to be obviously late night or weekends. And so having a side hustle, sometimes you do have to make that judgment call of, am I working full time? Is that harming my side hustle for being able to grow and actually getting me to a point where I can go side hustle to being like your full time business owner kind of thing? Because you've only got a short amount of time that you can spend on it. Other people may not be able to connect with you in that time. So it might be harder to grow it in that environment.
Mm,
But you've got to weigh it up based on what you can do, what you can't do. And for many people, like you said, it's just not possible to go straight and jump all in like you've done. So
mm,
you've got to make the side hustle work. You've just got to, I mean, it's called a side hustle for a reason. Like, it's not
mm.
easy. It's not, I get home
Yeah.
and you live your normal life and somehow money falls in your lap. Like, you've got to
Underline
hustle.
hustle.
Yeah. Like, you've got to hustle to make that work, because you're going to be tired
Yeah.
from your normal job. And then you've got to somehow come home and then find the motivation to continue working, but for yourself.
Yeah. And it's not something really, if your intention is to move from your employment to this side hustle business, it's not something you can just go, oh, no, I can't be bothered today, I'm not going to do it. Like, you can't do that to
Yeah.
your job. You can't ring up your employer saying, nah, can't be, I'm not coming in. So
Mm.
you've got to have the passion, you've got to really have a passion and a drive to make that
Yeah.
work. Otherwise, it'll just fizzle off and you'll just be back to employment. And then it's just kind of this, sometimes you can get into this spiral. Um,
Yeah. And I guess that kind of rolls us into the next topic anyway, which was, when does the passion and that kind of side hustle thing maybe become unrealistic and you may have to call it quits?
hmm,
Because just because you've got a passion for something doesn't mean if it's not working that you should stick to it, because
yeah,
there is a gap between you enjoying something and something that's able to actually make money and make money work for you. So even though you
hmm,
enjoy it, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to make money from it and you're going to be able to turn that into a full-time employment for yourself as a business owner. Um, so I guess recognizing when you need to do that would only come from having done it and monitoring your numbers and monitoring how your business is going and whether or not it is able to make you enough money. And if you've, um, there is this one person that we know that constantly complains about their business and always asks people for help on how to do things. But yet they fail to actually take any reasonable steps to improve their business. So I think they've both reached out to me and Corey. I don't know who else they've reached out to in their journey
oh,
as a business
right.
owner.
I know who you're talking about now.
But no matter how many times they must reach out to different people, and we put in effort, we give them responses and saying, hey, well, if you want to grow your business, and because they don't have much money, you could do this, and we give them tips on low cost options that they could help grow their business. They never seem to actually want to take the initiative and do it. I'm like, it may be a passion of theirs to have this business, but at some point, if it's costing you money and it's not actually making you money and you're going backwards, at some point, maybe you just have to go back to it being a hobby as opposed to a passion in business.
Hmm.
You just got to monitor it. You've got to know when to make that call based on your own personal circumstances. And if it's
Yeah.
not adding to your life, then at some point you may just have to take that back from being a business passion to a hobby passion.
Yeah. That person is an excuses person. They have an
Yeah.
answer and excuse for every solution, and it's always negative.
Yeah.
If you're that type of person, don't listen to the podcast. Please unsubscribe and don't go into business because it's going to help nobody. Seriously.
Yeah, in business, you have to kind of be open to things we have talked about in the past. Like you're going to have to pivot. Sometimes you can't go in and you can't just stay with what you thought you were going to do. Like Corey's changed his business model and now he's, got this new business and all that kind of stuff that they're merging. So when you start, you can't have that negative mindset of, oh, well, I just want it to work the way it is. That's not ever going to happen. You're going to have to make changes. You're going to have to be adaptable. So, yeah, if that is your mindset, maybe business ownership isn't the right thing for you.
Hmm. Um, I think also where passion becomes unrealistic is, if you get to a point where your business isn't making any money, and or it's getting further into debt, or you're kind of at a stalemate
Mm-hmm.
and you're not prepared to do anything about it, then you give up.
Yeah,
Like I've
exactly.
invested, I remember having a conversation with a person a few years ago, and they had purchased a business that used to be a retail store, but they didn't want the retail store. It was all online. They had, to my knowledge, they had no business acumen, no business history. They had no funds to put into the business, although apparently they had gotten a loan, some sort of business loan. No idea where that money went.
Okay.
They were selling on the products on a platform they shouldn't have been really selling them on, which would have devalued the brand.
Mm,
And they were just not willing to invest anything. So, like, one of the
right.
things I learned early on was I invested thousands of dollars into a course, and I've done 2 courses now where I've invested money into them that taught me skills that I will always have for the rest of my life, and that brought in thousands and thousands of dollars for my business.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, if you're in a stalemate and you're struggling to grow, you know, you just have to pay for things. If you can't do them yourself, you just have to invest in yourself. You have to invest in your business, invest in yourself. That's what I did. It worked for me. Um, you just have to go and it's this. I have this analogy that I'm not sure where I stole it from, but I stole it from somebody. Basically, where I say to someone to do ads or to do this course or whatever it might be, to work with us is say $5,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or 10 grand, whatever it might be. And like, oh no, that's way too expensive. I can't afford that, right? But then I can almost guarantee you, if I went back to them and said, I'll give you $1 million home, all expenses paid, if you can find $100,000,
Mm-hmm.
they'll find $100,000, right? Or
Yeah.
I'll give you a Tesla if you can find $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
Tesla's yours, brand new one, untouched. You find 10 grand, it's yours. They'll go and find $10,000.
Yep.
So it's not a matter of not having the money or not being able to get the money. It's a matter of value, that they don't
Mm.
see the value in what they're paying for.
Mm.
And that's the problem, I think, is that they don't. It's risky. They don't want to spend money on themselves. They might not see the value in it. Um, but the problem is, and this happens so often, it's just ridiculous. And I can see that I know the result, that if they don't do this, nothing's going to change and it's going to get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I can do about it. It's frustrating, but that's the reality.
Mm.
You try and help people and do what you can, but if they're not prepared to, um, you know, I basically sunk all the money I had at the time that was coming into my business into this course I did. It was all gone. I had nothing left over. Um, but it's resulted in a skill that I will always have and
Mm-hmm.
helped me generate lots of money um, after that.
Yeah.
So your passion has to have, what's the word? I feel like there's a word for this. It has to have substance.
Mm-hmm.
Sustenance. Sustenance. There has to be something there.
Yes.
Not just a dream. Oh, actually, I have another story. There's
Okay.
another person I talked to that had, um, I want to say a t-shirt business selling on a platform, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to make more money, and so I went over the numbers. And I said, okay, well, what are the fees of this platform? And they told me what the fees were. And I said, what are you selling your t-shirts for? And they told me, and I said, well, you're at a negative. I said, you're selling them at like you're losing money every time you sell something.
Uh,
So without even looking at the design of the t-shirts or anything else,
mm-hmm.
you're losing money. So there's no, and they were like, oh, but I don't want to sell them for that much. I want them to be available. And I'm like, well, you don't have a business. And so we talked about upping them. I said, well, look at other people that are doing the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
how much they're selling them for. And so we upped the price.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you need to sell them at this price in order to be profitable. And she's like, oh, maybe I'll put them up a little bit more, but it was still less than the fees. So she was still losing money. And I'm like, ay, 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 you're losing, like, this isn't even a business if you're going to lose money.
Nah,
Like, there
it has to
wasn't
be
any other,
viable.
it's not like, you can have a loss leader in a business where you lose money on a product to get other things happening. It wasn't anything to do with that. It was like, this is her main product.
Mm-hmm.
And she just couldn't see that she was going to lose money and that she wasn't going to get anywhere if she was going to have a product that was less than the cost.
Yeah.
And so I'm like,
No.
well, there's nothing I can do if you can't see that. So that's where passion is unrealistic.
Yes.
Next
Definitely
topic.
agree. We ranted on that one quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
So your personal success, do you define that, or do you think success is about how much money you have, how happy you are, or like the impact you have on the people around you? Do you think it's a blend of those three? And I guess we'll just discuss what you think and then what I think, and I guess see if we're different or if we align on our definitions.
I think God, I don't really pasty. Um, I guess success is a personal thing. I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
probably like a societal success, which I can only assume is like successful means being, I want to say rich is the typical word to say, but
Yeah.
being like wealthy or financially free, where you're not
Yeah.
kind of living week to week or um I'd also say many people would class someone as successful if they have assets like a nice home and a nice car. I think
Yes.
that
Yeah.
would be deemed through society as being successful.
Mm-hmm.
Having a fancy career or a fancy name would be deemed successful.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, for me, successful means, I think probably the only thing it means for me is me living the life I want to live
Mm-hmm.
and whatever that means to me. So for me, I don't need to have a fancy car, a fancy house, um, a bloody $500,000 salary or anything crazy like that. It just means that I can live comfortably,
Mm-hmm.
um, be somewhat financially free.
Mm-hmm.
I run my businesses and I can do those remotely wherever I am. How I want, as I said before, I can work when I want, where I want, how I want.
Yep.
Um, and so for me, that's my success, you know? Uh,
Fairly basic.
yeah.
I like that. I'm kind of similar. For me, success is a blend of having enough money to live the lifestyle you want to live. So whatever that looks for each person, obviously some people like to have the fancy handbags at $3,000 a pop, and the fancy shoes that are a couple of grand, and have the huge big house and all that kind of stuff. And others like Corey sound pretty content. They don't need anything that huge and worth a lot of money. So it's about, I guess, yeah, having enough money that you can choose how you want to live your life and live your life the way that you want to, and being happy doing that, I feel, is the other one. Because obviously there's this debate about money doesn't buy you happiness, but then a lot of people are like, well, actually,
It
kind of does a
helps.
little bit.
It
And I'm
helps.
of the mindset that having money definitely helps the happiness, because it's going to let you live the life you want to live. Um, and so for me, success would be, yeah, being able to not have to trade my hours every week in employment to have to make the money back. I'd like to have some sort of a, in future, some way that I can be making some passive income. Obviously we're doing some hours towards business and that kind of thing, but I want to be able to have a wee bit more freedom on the money front, but still have it enough coming in that I can pay my bills and live comfortably. And I also just want to be happy. I feel like you can't, like, if you're successful because you've got a lot of money but you're not happy with the people that you surround yourself with the lifestyle you've built for yourself, then you're not truly successful. Because happiness to me means everything. I love the life that I live now. I would even classify myself as somewhat successful now, with just, I've I'm in a job I really like. I've got a great relationship. I have a house that I love to be in. We've got a mortgage and everything, but it's our own home. We've just bought a new car. That's really nice because our old one was starting to crap out a little bit, so kind
Very
of needed
nice
to
car.
upgrade. So I feel like that's kind of my definition. And as for whether or not, and yeah, and then whether or not the impact I have, I think for me personally, that feeds into my happiness. Because if you like, I tell my partner when I come home if I've been able to solve problems at my work during the day, and he notices instantly. Like, if I come home and I'm really in a great mood and I'm really happy, he's like, what have you done today? I'm like, I helped this person fix this, and I fixed this problem, and I worked out this, and I built this for this person, and it's going to save them like an hour or two a week. Then that's when I'm at my happiest, is when I actually have an impact and help other people. So for me, those two are kind of tied up into one, because it makes me the happiest when I have a positive impact on other people. So that's how I'd kind of define it. How do we balance dreams with responsibilities? I kind of feel like we've already touched on that a little
Yeah, we've
bit,
already answered that.
because we've kind of
Planning.
mentioned
Planning is what you do there.
exactly, and what we regret not doing sooner, things that we held back out of
Nothing.
fear or practicality. For me, I've probably held back a little bit in starting my business. Yes, there are some rules, but technically, I could have started my business now if I wanted to. And there's a little bit of fear there, but I'm not going to let it hold me back. I do put myself out of my comfort zone when I really want to. It's just a matter of I haven't felt like it was the right time yet to do that. Um, so, yeah, and then I guess our biggest takeaways on, I guess, making career or life decisions, and any final thoughts on this episode.
Always plan for them. Plan to the nth degree, every little cost. Plan,
Yeah.
put your Netflix in there, put your fish and chips on a Friday in there. Like, you need to make sure every cost is captured to have
Mm-hmm.
a realistic view of what the position you're going to be in. Same with
Yeah.
business. Like, I don't worry about small costs now because I know they're in my head. But you need to factor in that if you're going to have a coffee with a client, there's $20
Mm-hmm.
for coffee. There's $10 a month for bank fees. There's whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just plan. Get advice. Have a conversation with us. We're
Yeah.
happy to help.
definitely happy to help. My biggest takeaway on career or life decisions and thoughts is um, yeah, if you have something you enjoy doing and it's able to make money, then follow that passion because it's going to make going into business easier if you've got a passion for that business, which we've kind of touched on other episodes. And we potentially may do a bit more about that when we talk about our Maya business. We probably might touch on why we started that and where that idea came from. But yeah, be aware of when if your passion no longer is making you money, that go back to a hobby. He's distracted again.
I have something exciting.
What do you have to share?
Our next episode is going to have our sister as a guest.
Is she going to come on?
Yep, after this.
Okay, that's exciting.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. If you've lasted to the end, I hope you have enjoyed this episode and enjoying these kind of topics that we're doing. So last week and this week and probably next week will be similar. These kind of nice chatty topic ones. If you have any ideas or topics you'd like us to talk about, or if you have any comments or want to chat to us at all, you can leave us a comment both on the YouTube video or on Spotify. Because don't feel afraid to reach out. We're here to help. We like to talk. We want to engage with you guys. So definitely feel free to reach out and engage with us, and we'll comment back, and we might do episodes answering questions, that kind of stuff. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned something, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.